Welcome to the LandLife podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
Hey guys, welcome to the LandLife podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, we got a super special guest, but before we get started, don't forget, like, subscribe, leave 5 stars every single time, even if you don't like it. Even if you think my background's bad, my bald head is weird. I got a guy on here with great hair. Lane has got great hair, so he counteracts my baldness. So you got to like this, give it 5 stars. And yeah, so today we got a guy, Lane Kawaoka. I said it right, correct?
Close enough. Close enough. Simple passive cash flow is the only thing that matters.
Simple passive cash flow. That's Lane's business. Lane, go ahead and tell us about yourself, kind of how you got started, kind of what got us to this point here.
Yeah. So currently today, $1 billion of assets under ownership,
Good
7,700 rental properties. But I mean, nobody cares about the vanity metrics. So I started working for the man as an engineer, never really liked it. And this is back in 2007. I graduated college and kind of followed this life that we're all kind of taught to do: invest in your 401k, which is a bunch of garbage, buy a house to live in, and just work for 40, 50 years as, most of your returns are being taken away from Main Street or Wall Street investments. Bought a house to live in, because that's what everybody said you should do. And because I was working, a lot of my work was like traveling 100% of the time. And therefore I was like, as a young 20-year-old kid, I was like, well, why don't I just rent this thing out and make some money? And then I did. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty powerful stuff. When you're making money 4 ways, mortgage pay down, tax benefits, appreciation, and cash flow, I'm making like 20, 30% plus returns on my money. And
Wow.
And why the heck would I want to put my money in this 8 to 10% 401k nonsense? And then I just saved up my money from my day job. And, by 2015, several years later, I had about 11 rental properties. And then I started to do multifamily syndications after that.
Okay. So multifamily versus single family. What made you go into multifamily? Why don't you just stick to a bunch of single family? I mean, you could buy a ton of houses in Indianapolis for $50,000, right? Or, little towns and little cities like that. What made you go into multifamily after you were already doing single family?
Yeah, well, the stuff on the side of the cereal box, all the typical marketing stuff, is all true. Where you have economies of scale, you're getting away from the mom and pop investors, so you're getting better pricing. It's just more scalable too, and you're working with better vendors, better contractors when you go on the bigger scale. But to me, the way I look at it, and I kind of help my clients see is like it's a journey, right? Like in the beginning, you don't have that much money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, you got to get unbroke. If you can't keep a freaking budget, you don't make more than 60, 70 grand a year at your day job or at your business, then you got to get right on that first, right?
Okay.
You can't be a bonehead with your finances. You need money to invest in real estate. If you don't have money, you need to work on that first. But when I first started as a young engineer, I had pretty good financial skills. I was pretty frugal. But my first step is to go buy that first rental property, because a lot of times syndications are for accredited only investors. I think that it kind of makes sense once your net worth goes higher than $500,000. But if you're under that, go buy a rental property, learn the business, especially so you can vet bigger deals later and you can improve your network with other passive investor colleagues. But if you're an accredited investor already, you may jump right into larger syndication deals as a passive investor.
Okay. So I'm a guy who shows up every day to my office. I have a regular W-2 job. Let's say I make okay money. And I want to get started. I'm not accredited yet, but I want to get started. I want to get going starting on day one. So you're saying start maybe single family homes, right? Something.
Well, where's this dude's net worth at?
Let's say his net worth is at, he owns a home that's worth $350,000, and he makes $80,000 a year. This is our guy.
Well, I would say maybe go buy one rental property, get the hang of it, but certainly don't be like me and buy 11 of those annoying things.
Okay.
It's you have a property manager to do all your dirty work for you for sure, but it still becomes a headache after a while. And once you have an eviction or two and the tenants mess up your properties, you kind of realize why sophisticated, higher net worth investors always move towards being a passive investor. Not to mention, you're not signing on the debt personally as a passive investor, and you don't have that legal liability in addition.
Okay. So I'm going for the house. I'm not going to do 11 like Lane. I'm just going to do a couple to get my kind of my bearings and understand this thing. Do I go local? Do I buy in my community? I mean, I live in Denver. It's not exactly affordable. I think our median price housing in the Denver metro area was like $700,000. Do I go out of state or do I stay local? What would you advise somebody in that position?
Yeah, I mean, the website's simplepassivecashflow.com for a reason, right? We invest off cash flow because we don't gamble on appreciation. So we are already excluding primary markets such as Seattle, Hawaii, all the state of California. I would consider Denver more of a primary market. And other ones are like Miami, New York. The reason why we stay away from here is you're just not going to find those like the properties to hit those rent to value ratios that we're looking for. And we're looking for 1% rent to value ratio or higher.
Now, real quick,
rent to value?
For somebody that doesn't understand that, what does 1% mean?
Yeah, so you take the monthly rent divided by the purchase price, and that is the rent to value ratio. So we're looking for something that's 1% or higher. So, if you're living in California or these other markets I mentioned, it's just not going to work, dude. It's not going to work. The guys who are like, oh, I don't want to leave my neighborhood, right? I'm so scared, even though I don't say that. Dude, and they're going to look at like some of the crappy areas. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's not going to work. You're better off going to one of these more secondary or tertiary markets. A little less competition, better pricing, the numbers work. Sure, it's not going to appreciate as much, right? But we want a strategy, or at least I choose a strategy that performs in a recession. And when you invest in properties that cash flow, you don't really care if the price goes up or down. Of course, you want to sell at the right place, right? But you don't want to be underwater, and you don't want to be bleeding cash, more importantly. So you want to ensure that you have that 1% rent to value ratio or higher to be able to cash flow.
Okay, so now you're going outside of the state because it's not working for me here in Denver. So I'm going to go to a different city, a different town, a different city where, like you said, I'm getting that 1% return. It works in every aspect of real estate in this specific city. Now I'm going to need to develop some relationships. I'm going to need to start meeting some people out there. How much of your success would you attribute to relationships in that specific community that are kind of boots on the ground type people?
Yeah, I mean, we're not like rehabbing properties, right? Like we're not doing the stuff that the kids do who are broke, this BRRRR strategy, BRRRR. Now, if you don't have that much money, cool, you got to do it, right? Like if your net worth is under $250,000 and you have time on your hands to kind of manage this stuff. But, if you're kind of in that middle land, you're not quite accredited, you've got a busy life, busy family, it doesn't really make sense to do that. Really, the relationships that you're really needing is the property manager and a good broker. Okay. The lenders, the insurance guys, they're all ubiquitous. They're pretty much the same. Just get the referrals from those first two people initially. And I would argue that property manager is the first person, okay, the most important person. But be careful. If you're not educated and you're some newbie, a good property manager won't want to deal with you. So have that in mind first. And that's why you say, well, get a little educated first. I mean, yeah, you want to buy something because that's how you learn, but get educated first before you start getting out there and building relationships, because you could alienate a lot of people if you become kind of that newbie that doesn't have any practical knowledge in their head.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a lot of those middle class people that are kind of stuck. We have a good job. It's good, but it's not. I'm not flying a private jet to Hawaii to see Lane on the weekends, so what would you say is, let's get a Cliff Notes or a preview of coaching with Lane. What would be a first step, like an initial step that you would teach somebody to go looking for real estate?
Well, I mean, I don't coach people anymore because it's not a good use of time, but
Okay.
I have all these e-courses that people can get for free. I mean, people want like, text the word remote to 314-665-1767. They can download that free remote investor light course. I mean, I think it's like 6 hours of like me kind of going through this process of going, buying a rental property. We used to coach people on this, and then I realized it was kind of, I mean, most of our investors are accredited on the passive investor side in syndications, but we give away this stuff for free because, I mean, like you said, right, this person you're talking about, they're kind of screwed, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they're not broke, but they're too small for the big stuff. So how the heck do you get there, right?
Yeah.
But it's, and I'm saying it's easy, but it is kind of a simple process, right? You learn a little bit about it. You start to put your numbers, you understand the rent to value ratio, and it's cool. Now we kind of excluded all these garbage properties that don't cash flow. Next step is to go put it into the analyzer. If people want to go download my analyzer, they go to simplepassivecashflow.com/analyzer, download it for free. And you start playing around with the numbers, and you kind of understand how much money goes to certain expenses like repairs, capex, vacancy. So your positive cash flow. You buy for positive cash flow. It doesn't matter when you invest.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. People got it in their head that real estate's risky. Like, yeah, it's risky when you're flipping houses and your damn property doesn't cash flow day one. But if not, it's pretty conservative. I mean, sure, the prices might go up and down, but generally they go up on the long term.
Sure. So Lane's you're kind of the example of someone who was in that position, who worked, learned, kind of grew through it. And now you're at a higher level, and now you're working with bigger properties, better cash flow, things like that. Sticking to that topic in general, how do you get money? So I'm this guy that has the job, right? I want to be like Lane, and I'm gonna get there. How do you raise money? I was on LoopNet the other day, right? And I see a house or an apartment complex. Let's say it's $2 million for 20 units in my community. I don't have $2 million. Where do I start looking for the cash?
I don't know. I'm not the money funding guy, right? I'm not the broke investor to sell you a $40,000, $50,000 course to teach you how to do this with some archaic thing that worked 10 years ago. I'm the guy who if you have a good job and you save at least $20,000, $30,000 a year, you got some traction, man. It's going to take you a few years to save up for your next rental property, your next deal. That's my secret sauce, is just being a cheapo, right? It takes, if you look at all these people that kind of grew their net worth slowly over time, it started with a period of just frugality and being smart with your money, but putting that money to investments. The richest man in Babylon, essentially the secret is putting away 10% of your net worth. When I was, bought my first rental in 2009, for the next several years, I was saving $100,000 of my paycheck to put into investments. I wasn't really spending too much of it. And that was the stuff that set me up. And that what allowed me to accelerate it through these lower rungs of investment quicker. I have like a page on my website that has all these cheapo ideas, the things I don't really do these days. I think it's like simplepassivecashflow.com/cheapo. But to me, it's like, that's the kind of the stoic way you have to do it. There's no get rich quick type of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if you're an entrepreneur, right, like maybe you should take some of this free cash flow and put it right into your business. But, we all know, most entrepreneurs are not successful. So that's another thing.
Okay. So Lane, for you personally, what's your end goal? Like, what's the big overall goal that you see? You started at the single family, now you're in multifamily, you're syndicating. What's the big goal here?
I think the goal is just to keep doing more deals, just expanding the portfolio with cash flow. Somewhere along the way, I kind of enjoyed kind of sending the elevator back down, helping out other people get started with this. So it all kind of helps. The platform, finds people and it educates people how to get started doing this type of stuff, how to think more like a passive investor than to trade your time for money. And for me, it's very enriching. Like, I mean, we still do free intro strategy calls for people getting started, and I mean they're short these days, and I can do them really quickly. But like for a lot of people, they just have so much bad financial advice around them: buy or hold to live in, invest in the 401k, um, pay down your debt, right? Like that's just not what the wealthy do. The wealthy use as much debt as they can if they can pay their debt service, and that's what increases their net worth over time. And a lot of what frustrates me is a lot of these things that were put into place. It's exactly to keep the working middle class down. It's especially from a tax perspective, like we don't pay too much taxes as investors, especially because of passive losses and bonus depreciation and these other tactics that the wealthy use to drive their adjusted gross income down. A lot of these taxes are very simple, and the stuff I kind of learned from my peers, growing up through this stuff. But what was frustrating is like it's very counterintuitive that what we teach, and it's nothing that the average Joe can't implement to some extent.
Sure.
And like the system is engineered, right, to like have high paid, high performing people to work at their jobs for 40, 50 years and to pay a shit ton of taxes. And it's not the wealthy paying it. It's not the poor people paying it. It's like the kind of that. And I just thought it was unfair, right? Like the people that kind of jump on board are kind of those revolting working professionals, and they realize that there's a different way to do this. That's but awesome. It takes a little courage.
Yeah, I was reading the other day something like 60-something% of people don't pay federal taxes, something to that degree. And after paying my taxes yesterday, I can tell you a lot of us do pay a lot in federal taxes every year. I want to ask you about something too. Debt. You mentioned debt. So growing up, I was always told debt's a bad thing, man. Get those credit cards, eliminate those credit cards, get rid of all debt. But you're not talking about that kind of debt. You're talking about maybe a different kind. Can you explain to like Johnny Average what your type of debt is versus what, that consumer debt that they're thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, consumer debt, where you pay your credit cards 10, 20% plus. Yeah, we all get it. We're not idiots. We listen to podcasts. We're smarter than the average Joe, or 95% of people out there that are in credit card debt that spend more of the money than they make, right? We're talking to some smart people out there. And I think this is where, like, we call this the shift from Dave Ramsey mode, right? People are not financially literate enough to determine the difference between bad credit card debt and other debt that allows you to grow your net worth over time. Whether you buy a business, you go into debt for it, but if a business creates free cash flow to eventually pay it off, or more, this is how the banks look at it. It's debt service coverage ratio. Can the cash flow cover the debt? And like, for example, we can't buy properties unless it hits a 1.25. The banks won't give us a loan unless it hits that. So take that on your own personal finances too. But yeah, like, this is where I think people, they are taught something as kids. And when I say kids, is the financially literate. And there's a different blueprint that the wealthy people go by, which is, they go into debt for things that grow their net worth and create that cash flow for them, passive income generators or pigs. So this is just hard because, a certain dogma of like financial teachings, it totally goes against it, right? And it's like, wait, this doesn't make sense. It's like, like telling your small nephew, yeah, don't go crossing the street because it's dangerous, right? You don't allow them to do that. There are certain things that you tell the financially illiterate: don't go into any debt. But for people who, you make a good salary, you don't go into bad consumer debt, you're saving $5,000, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 plus a year, you got to get on the offense and, not, going into as much debt as possible for good cash flow. Yeah, I mean, it sounds so simple, but the problem is like we've been brainwashed with all this stuff, and And the wealthy don't give a rip about interest rate and the amount of debt we're in. And if you notice, I mean, I don't interact with too many of these people other than family anymore. But you know how everybody's talking about like, oh, I got like a 3.25 interest rate on my car loan or mortgage. The wealthy don't give a rip about that. They care about what's happening to their freaking net worth. And can they pay the debt service, which is essentially cash flow, which you want cash flow in terms of a recession where to pay your debt service. Yeah. That's what they're looking at. And a lot of times it's just not aligned.
It seems to be just a way of thinking, like a change in the way you think is kind of the way you are now versus the way, honestly, a lot of people, some of your family members maybe, but the vast majority of people out there are thinking. It's just a way, it just changed the way you think.
Yeah, it's a huge mindset thing. I mean, like one thing that always happens is like, you know, investors, they have their house, they're paying off their debt on their house, which is not the right thing to do for the financially inept or the financially, you know, people who are pretty sophisticated. You don't want to pay down your debt. You want to take that free cash flow and put it to more and more investments. Yeah. But typically when people find us, they've been doing this for freaking 10 to 20 years and they have a lot of equity. So they take a HELOC from the house to go invest it and go make, you know, buy other rental properties or go into deals. And then the biggest thing is they're like, but I got to pay this debt service. I got to pay, you know, X amount of interest. And that might be several $1,000s a month. That's the mindset shift here. And this is where you need to get around other high net worth accredited investors doing this stuff too, to tell you, don't worry, dude. That's just how I thought too. But then I understand how money actually works, right? We did the math. If we keep buying these other rental properties with that, we can more than pay for that debt service. It may not be instant, right? It may take a month or two. It might take even a year or two, right? But you got to believe, man. I mean, this is what the banks do, right? The banks arbitrage their debt. If the debt service is 4% on this, and you can eventually make 12, 15, 20%, it's a no-brainer. But I get it, right? I empathize it. Like that's where I was at one point too, right? Yeah. Freaking out about our $4,000 payment, even though it is 2 or 4% of what it is. We kind of, you got to look for the long-term perspective there. And it also it always continues, right? Like nowadays we're doing infinite banking where, you know, we use whole life insurance to just as a mechanism, not to pay taxes. I don't care about the life insurance part. But it's a way to stuff cash in there so we can go take the cash value portion and borrow from it and to go and invest just like a HELOC. And then, again, people are like, I feel uncomfortable because I got to pay back myself, you know, the note, right? The interest rate, whether it's like 5% or whatever. And it's like, no, man, it's the same thing like the HELOC stuff. Same story. It's just the mindset thing. So it's like it's continually understanding it and getting more pragmatic. And for some people, it's just like, dude, just look at the numbers. You know, what's the impact to your net worth? Again, don't worry about what's happening with the interest rates. Don't worry what's happening with the amount of debt you have. Look at the net worth. Right? That's what you're guiding towards.
Yeah. You know, it's funny too. I think no matter, as you grow in different levels, you know, you're an employee, then you do get a few rentals and you start bringing in some income. Now you start becoming a house rental guy. Now, you know, in order to grow to the next level, you have to completely change your mindset state to go to the next one. That, I think that may be one of the biggest group of people that have kind of a roadblock. Maybe they get that first round. You know, I buy and sell vacant land, right? I know a lot of people in the vacant land world that aren't going to go higher. They're never going to move past that level because they still have that roadblock. One of the things I found is to continue to grow is preparation. You know, being prepared prior to going into maybe a multifamily conversation or a self-storage conversation. What do you do to prepare? What are you doing to prepare every single week to go into something new?
I don't know, man. I just take it day by day. I mean, I try to write down what are the most important things I do, but I'm not the best of it.
Are you writing down like goals or anything to like push you through into the next week to where when that question comes up and you're like, or are you so far into the game that it just flows?
I take a more pragmatic approach with all that stuff. I don't wake up and meditate and fix my bed and I I mean, I don't rewrite it in the stupid journal again. I think that's a waste of time. I'm sorry if I offend you if you do that, right? But to me, you only have 5-6 hours of good brain power a day. I'm not going to waste 15-20 minutes, which is what, like, I don't know, 10% of it, a good chunk of it, rewriting my damn goals. I should know it by now, and I get the reason why you do it. But again, I think if you think of terms of paradigms, that works for people who are just getting started. Once you've got a traction, or you certainly kind of move towards like a successful entrepreneur, dude, you should know your goals. You need to write that shit down every day. That's a waste of freaking time. Like.
So, okay, you mentioned like 5 to 6 hours. Then, are you kind of time blocking? Like, here, hey, from 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock, these are my work hours. This is when I'm making all my calls. I'm dealing with all my, whatever the people are in my industry. Are you doing that, and then the rest of the day is off, or are you just kind of like you're taking it as it comes?
I mean, it's changed like several iterations. I mean, just take a snapshot of today just to give some peaceful idea. I'm not saying I'm sure it'll change 5 or 6 times in the next decade, but like right now, I kind of place the things that I have to do that if I don't do, like going to the gym, I try and do that kind of relatively in the morning after I've kind of checked some of the fires of the day. Um, I set time with the family, like the larger blocks. Of course, like the dinner times and meal times are kind of set with that. Other than that, it's kind of a free for all. People, my staff will kind of book me on stuff, call with you. It's just kind of ad hoc. And I just kind of, when I'm not doing anything, that's when I kind of work on the bigger projects. But that's just how it works. I mean, I don't know. I think, and I don't know. I guess I understand why all this stuff is always important. People talk about this stuff, but I think again, it's geared towards the people who haven't found traction yet. If you found traction, I would say take deliberium to do whatever feels right for you. It's like if you just like for finances we're talking about early, if you're some dude who spends more money than you freaking make, or you make less than $50,000 a year, you need to go and work on the basics. And here are a complete set of rules that you need to follow because you're a little child. You cannot figure out what you're going to do. But if you're a responsible adult who holds down a 6-figure salary and saves $20,000 to $30,000 a year, there are no rules for you, right? It's just there's more options that you have, I think. So if you're somebody who hasn't done anything in business or life yet, trying to get started, then go make your bed because it makes you feel good and it makes you some control in the chaotic world. Meditate, think of goals, because if we don't have you do this every day, you'll never have any freaking goals. And that's a problem.
Yep.
But once you've hit traction, then we ease up, right, on the rules, right? I don't have adult teenage kids yet, but that's the way that's the way I was kind of grown up, right? Like parents don't treat me like a child after a certain point.
Yeah. So basically structuring your life is kind of like an intro level thing. When you want to get, if you've come from zero structure, you're going to need to do something to get initially started.
The problem is, like, how do you define when you've gotten started or you've gotten traction? Most times we're not the best at looking at our blind spots, and some people think that they're more accomplished than they really are. So I don't know. Go hire a coach.
Is there a
but
point
then
where would you think that the point is where you're like, okay, I'm ready to, I'm on the right track now. I can start moving on. Where would it be then?
Yeah, I know. So you got a lot of
nobody really knows when you're
entrepreneurs.
there. You just don't know.
Yeah, a lot of your followers are entrepreneurs listening. So I'll speak in terms of entrepreneurs. Speaking as an entrepreneur, it's kind of moved a little bit down this road. I think you've hit a little bit of traction once you're making like, I think a few $1,000s of revenue every month is cool. At least you're showing signs of life. That might be akin to going 20 miles an hour. But once you've kind of hit like 6 figures of income, of revenue a year, you're kind of moving down the freeway, right? 35 miles an hour. The next goal, I think, is to make, $50,000, $100,000 of profit. Now that's akin to going 50 miles an hour, right?
Okay.
I'd say at that point, now you can or maybe when you're going 35 miles an hour and you've got, 6 figures of revenue, who the hell knows how much net profit you're making, right? At that point.
Yeah.
That's kind of more vanity metric. I think you've officially hit a point where you can kind of take the training wheels off a little bit.
Okay. I think a lot of entrepreneurs too have shiny object syndrome. Like I know I do, when I'll be steady, things are going really well. And then somebody like Lane will come on the podcast, talk about syndications. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should be doing that. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. When you're out there and you're meeting people that you didn't know existed 10 years ago, you didn't know that industry existed 10 years ago. You're jumping all over the place. I guess I'm pretty sure I know the answer. What's your advice on that shiny object syndrome and kind of moving and always looking for the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is like if you're trying all this stuff and you're diversifying your business offerings, the reason why you're doing it, and it totally makes sense, is because you haven't gotten traction in any one damn thing yet. And you're trying to diversify because you're throwing the spaghetti on the wall. And I did this. And I think it kind of is good too, because you don't may or may not know where you resonate with. Like, for example, when we started the first Do the podcast in 2016, I was just kind of doing whatever. And it shows that way. But slowly down the road, the next couple of years, as I was getting, a bunch of emails from people and a lot of good feedback, and then we started to do, I would see my avatar, right? And your avatar is your ideal person listening out there. You need to be laser focused on who that person is. Like I go on to a lot of podcasts, and I ask yourself, right? Who's out there? Like, tell me about them. Yeah. And if the person says, it's everybody. I don't know. It's old and young. They got they work all these wide ranges. It's like, dude, your brand sucks. You don't know what the heck you're doing, right? And I already know. Well, nobody's listening to this podcast, or they don't have really a successful podcast. And I think part of that goes to maybe ego, right? Like if you're like, we focus on high-paid working professionals with doctors, lawyers, engineers, and that's it, right? If you kind of it's like you're putting all your chips on that bet. You're betting on yourself. And if that's the case and it doesn't happen, your ego could probably take a beating for that type of thing. But now I think what people are subconsciously doing is they're like, well, we work with everybody, everybody's a potential client. Everybody it's geared towards everybody. It's general topics, general audience. It's like, and then when it inevitably doesn't work, they're like, well, it's not like I said it was going to be like that. It's like,
I think a lot of people do it too when they're new, or they've transitioned into a new industry because they don't want to potentially lose someone. I think they think, well, if I don't advertise to everybody, I'm going to lose somebody. I don't want to lose anybody. I think it's like it's just like that natural fear that you got to get over, and you got to kind of focus in on a specific type of person that you want to deal with. And
but then contradictory to itself, right? Like, I mean, I'm going to contradict myself. Maybe there's like 3 paradigms. I mean, we're first getting started. I get it. Shoot, spray and pray, right? See what works. Try all of these stupid social media platforms and do whatever, right? See where you get some traction. If there's some kind of freaking pulse out there, maybe you just aren't very good at it, and maybe there's an opportunity for you to like try it out in places to people that doesn't matter to you, because you're gonna mess it up anyway in your first couple of years doing it. But I think the second stage, and this is the critical part, is like once you've kind of honed your skills a little bit, figure out where you're getting the most traction and then focusing in on that. And then maybe the stage where I'm at, like I know who my message resonates with. Like I don't interact with like lower net worth guys these days. It's just different. It just doesn't work. And I kind of focus more on the higher net worth or successful entrepreneurs at this point. Um, and it just gets, the content gets more and more like specific and better for those guys, but we alienate other people, and that's fine. But then at some point, maybe it kind of comes full circle, because it starts to appeal to everybody, because everybody may resonate with that at some point in the journey.
Yeah. And you were saying you like to pass it down the elevator or something to that effect earlier today. And I think if you do focus specifically on an industry, you're going to bring in people that are like, I didn't know that even existed. I want to be a part of that. And then they're going to follow you because you are very specific on who you're interviewing, who you're talking to, who you're working with. And you're going to bring in those people that you were wanting to help initially. They're going to gravitate towards that if you just stick to a specific topic, as opposed to, like you said, spraying and praying.
Right. I mean, we'll use this as an example because I know your audience, this will make them chuckle, but like life coaches, right? Like,
yes,
kind of a very common character you meet on the entrepreneur journey, right?
Yep.
/ Reiki yoga instructor, right? Like, you get all these kinds of people. Like, I mean, I don't really see too many of them anymore, but that's more of a character you meet on the bottom rungs as an entrepreneur as they're growing. They're inevitably perpetually growing their business, are always trying to, but they never, I think the ones that get it right are the ones that go laser focus on, like, which we help men between 35 to 55 in this type of, personality type, or women. I work with women who, this nationality or whatever, right? Those are the ones that get it right, and they have a higher chance of getting traction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I get a lot of coaches that message me about all kinds of things, either to coach me or to be on a podcast or to have me on theirs. And when I asked them the question, okay, what do you do? What led you to want to coach somebody? Did you build a construction company? Did you build some sort of, are you a super fit guy and you're going to teach people how to be fit? They never necessarily, a lot of them, not never, but a lot of them.
We do everything.
They do everything, right? Yeah. They don't have anything. I see. So what did you build? Well, I help people. What do you help them in? Well, I just help people. So if they were to specifically say, well, I work out every day, I've been training, learning nutrition, I can help you get the best body of your life, it would absolutely change my thought process as to working with them, versus I can help you become a millionaire. How? Well, I just can. Like, are you a millionaire? No, but I can help you. And it's like, that thing is, but you're right. It's a lower rung. They have the desire to help. And I definitely get that. They have this a desire to help people get better. They just don't have the qualifications yet to get to that point.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of cojones to say, I help men who do some real estate things between the ages of 25 to 28. Yeah. It takes a lot to put your chips down there, because most likely you will not hit your goal, and you don't want to bruise your ego.
Yeah,
by doing that.
Absolutely. Lane, you got anything else you want to let us know?
No, we had another hour. We could probably get into like dating on this. Kind of goes the same on the same rabbit hole. But yeah, like, people want to learn more about passive real estate investing, and you've got some money, and I think the land flipping is a great idea to generate lots of money. But at some point, you've got to put that money into, if you can't do it to do more deals, right? Kind of like if you got a pizza parlor to buy more ovens or buy more staff, you got to put that money elsewhere to have it work for you. And that's, if at the end of the day, you're just trading time for money until you start to do that.
Sure. Absolutely. Where can people find you, Lane?
SimplePassiveCashflow.com, and then my podcast is Passive Real Estate Investing for the working professional. Simple Passive. I think if you just Google Simple Passive Cash Flow, it'll come up.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Lane, here's the big question. You ready for this one? Here's the big question. I prepped you on this about, 30 minutes ago. I sent you an email. So hopefully you're prepared for it. If you could buy land anywhere in the entire world, it can be anywhere, any size. If you could own land anywhere in the entire world, where would it be and why?
I'm I'm not gonna go more pragmatic on this direction. I would buy in low cap environments.
Okay.
Why is it low cap places? Because it's very unrisky, and it's very like high value land that is unrisky again. So where that like Hawaii, I would buy New York, California. It's all the primary markets that we said don't
Yeah.
buy real estate in. But land is a speculative thing. You guys are flipping them, and if I wanted to kind of hold assets, and I'm not a huge fan of gold, if I was going to do that, I would buy in those types of places.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's probably the smartest. It's a pretty smart answer there. Okay. Lane, thank you so much for being on here. You taught us a much higher level of real estate, of just business in general than sometimes that we typically get. So, dude, I really appreciate it. And guys, check out Lane, get his book, go to his podcast, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Until next time, though, LandLife. Thanks.